Today we've got...
I'm Robert Gerrish, founder of Flying Solo, author, presenter, podcaster, old guy.
All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Convo Couch. Today we've got Robert Gerrish, founder of Flying Solo and venture strategist. Thank you for coming along.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I fear that what it is not is terribly social. The title of it is a little bit misleading. As a marketing tool for businesses, it's certainly of some value. I fear that the way that social media, the people that own the platforms, the Mark Zuckerbergs and such like, they're not so interested in the benefit we get. They're more interested in making sure it's easy to use. And what worries me there is whenever anything is easy to use, it generally means that people will use it. That's what Mark Zuckerberg and others want. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the person using it has really considered why they're using it or how they're using it. So what I observe a lot in, particularly in the space that I work in, which are very small businesses, are people that use social media, but I mean, this is hardly a revelation, but they're not using it strategically. They're not thinking about why they're using it. They're, in many cases, spending, I believe, far too much time using it, where they could be doing things that are more meaningful and more valuable to their business. So for anybody who's not clear where they need to spend their time, which is the majority of small businesses, I would have to say, then social media is a delightful distraction. And it's a place where you can appear busy. It's like your inbox. You can easily spend your morning in your inbox if you choose, but is that valuable for your business? Is that taking your business in the direction you want it to go in? In a lot of cases it isn't. So social media is designed for us to use it, and I fear though that we sometimes use it a little bit too freely, too easily, and without any kind of strategy or structure.
Do you think Mark Zuckerberg or other people who created all these tech startups and social media sites had this idea in mind when they first started? I think it's evolved over time.
Oh, I'm sure I don't think they did at all. In these kind of businesses that evolve, they evolve through usage. So when you have a lot of very bright people, and clearly Mark Zuckerberg is a very bright person, he surrounded himself with a lot of other very bright people, is when you observe and you monitor people's usage. If you have as your end game usage growth and monetization, which clearly is two things they do have, and you have a lot of bright people sitting around observing, then you will always just make it easier to do the next thing, the next action, the next piece. You'll just take it further. But it's not necessarily to our benefit. It's clearly to the platform's benefit. But particularly in the case of businesses, I feel in many cases, it's not benefiting the business.
So how much and to what extent do you think businesses should embrace social media?
Oh, that's a nice question, but impossible to answer. It depends on the nature of the business. If I were in a business that was a highly visual business, if I was in interior design or I was in movie making, I would quite surely use a medium that suits my business, and social media would be terrific for that. If I was in interior design, I'm sure I'd spend a lot of my day on Instagram. If I was in the video business, I'd be posting videos to demonstrate my prowess. I do deal with a lot of people in the kind of professional services, so people like you, people like me, people that are selling their skills, their expertise for money, basically. I think that there's an imbalance currently with the amount of time people put into social media versus the reward. And I think it's starting to come out. We're starting to get a better understanding of what engagement really means. And just because somebody's seen your post or likes your post or puts a little heart on it, it doesn't really mean much. It doesn't mean anything in a lot of cases. And I think people are increasingly wising up to that. I mean, advertisers for years have been dramatically exploited and really kind of continue to be, because they believe, they are told that your post or your ad has been seen by so many people. But being seen, being counted, doesn't count as any form of engagement.
What does engagement mean to you?
I think engagement means that somebody is actually interested in conversation and interested enough to consume it and take value from it. You know, I've seen plenty of people. I move around, a big co-working space where there's a lot of people. I see a lot of people that are liking and putting various comments on, but I don't see anyone that is sitting back and engaging with it. So I think when we see brands that are talking about the level of engagement they have, just because Coca-Cola has however many millions of followers it has, I'm not sure that means that much.
You are saying that the important thing is engagement rather than people sort of liking or following.
Yeah, true engagement. Speaking to a guy yesterday, I was talking about a meeting that he was at, a presentation he was at, where they were discussing ways that startups can, get moving in their business. The discussion was generally suggesting that the first thing a startup needs to do is have a website and have a social media presence. And that's diabolical to think that that's the first thing a startup needs. But I fear that that's the message that's going out there. A website and a social media activity is not the first thing any business needs. What a business needs to do is to understand what business they're in, who they're trying to attract, who they're trying to talk to, who they're trying to engage with, and how best to do that. You do that first, then you come back and you say, okay, what's going to get us where we want to go? But too many businesses, I fear, are being sold the sort of magic of online marketing and are diving into that without having done the first bit. And I speak to a lot of people each and every week, and have done for a number of years, who have got a shiny website and have got a nice social media presence and have probably got a nice logo and got a nice business card, but they haven't got any customers. When you have conversations with those people, you can quite quickly, if you ask the right questions, can sort of find out why. And that reason is their message, their pitch, their proposition, their positioning has not been considered. At the small end of town, we can learn a lot from the big end of town. There's an awful lot the big end of town can learn from us, but that's another story. We can learn a lot from the big end of town because they put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money and a lot of brain power into their strategy and their positioning. If you look at what's been going on with the Banking Royal Commission lately, right? That's been a pretty horrific and catastrophic series of events for our banks, and they deserve everything they're getting, it would seem. But if you look at how they respond, it's quite interesting how the banking sector responds to what has basically been a high level of criticism, massive criticism of the basic ethics of business. So the way they respond to that is they spend a lot of money advertising, right? Because there's a strategy person there who's going, hang on a minute, if we're getting slammed over here, we need to create some nice stories over this side. So that's what small business can. I'm not suggesting that we want to in any way mimic the kind of behaviors of that instance, but you can see how they are planning their advertising, they're strategizing their approach, they're planning their response by creating activity that is miles away from this kind of negative stuff. So if you drive past any bank now, you'll see all sorts of messages in the window about how, usually anyway, when you can find a bank, you'll find messages that talk about how they're the most popular bank, how their app is the most popular app, how their service is the best. They're bombarding us with just reminding us of how popular they are. And the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to cover all this negativity that's over here. So as businesses, we can see there's a strategy there. It's planned, it's considered, and they chuck an awful lot of money at it. I remember the days when I was running Flying Solo, whenever there was kind of bad stuff going off in the media about a particular industry, you could bet your life they would spend some money advertising. So there's a lot to learn. As kind of marketers, we can observe what the big end of town are doing. And I'm not for one moment suggesting that we should take as role models the banking industry, but we can just see the difference between really strategized, really considered, really thought through marketing and positioning versus kind of stuff that isn't like that. And
you're not suggesting that they should be role models, but do you agree with their approach? Or how would you have approached the situation?
Oh, I don't know. Look, I can't really answer that. If I was running one of those banks, I think I'd shut the doors and go and do something else. I mean, I'd be so humiliated. So I'm probably not the right guy to ask that. I mean, with my marketing sort of background, I started at a very junior level with a very small agency. This is back in London, and I worked through that business and ultimately ended up as one of the directors of that business. But that was over a period of 10 years. My father was a small business owner. I've always had a love of marketing. I'm interested in kind of consumers, the reasons people take the actions that they take. That was a small business that I started off in. We then sold that business to Saatchi & Saatchi, a big ad agency. And I didn't stay there terribly long because I didn't actually enjoy the big agency side of things. I much preferred being small and nimble. So I kind of left and went out on my own again. And then I had a few sort of odd forays into music and art. I had a desire. I was at an age then, footloose and fancy free, no sort of commitments in my life, that I just wanted to experiment. And I was also full of the sort of arrogance of youth. We sold our business. So I thought, I'll go into the art world. I had an interest in art at that time. I still do. My wife's an artist, so. And I thought, what the art world is missing is marketing. That was my arrogance. I got it completely wrong. When I met artists, they were, generally hugely lovely, committed, passionate people. And yet when I walked into an art gallery, this was in London in the sort of late 80s, when I walked into an art gallery, there was this air of superiority and nobody looked at you and nobody talked to you and you walked around very hushed, very peaceful. And yet the work you were looking at was done by this really exciting bunch of people. And the galleries appeared to be quite empty. And I thought, well, this is wrong. As a marketing person, I was thinking, this is not right. There's somebody over there who's created these paintings and they're exciting and beautiful and wonderful. But there's three people looking at them in total silence. That doesn't seem right to me. So with the arrogance of youth, I thought what the art world needs is it needs marketing. So I opened an art gallery. And as it turned out, I was partially right. I bought an old building, which is actually a public lavatory in the park in London, and I converted it into an art gallery. I had a house, I sold my house, I put everything into this art gallery. And yes, I got a lot of people coming in. So I can kind of tick the box that I was right, that marketing got people into galleries. However, what I didn't get right is people didn't buy anything. Yes, I could get people to come and see it, but getting people to buy art was a different thing. So it's a good learning curve for me, very exciting time. Anyone in small business, we have to keep an eye on what's going on, obviously. And we can't stagnate, we can't sit still, we shouldn't sit still. So I'm always looking for what's going to excite me next. These days, most of my focus is actually on helping people in businesses that have got to that point where they are feeling a little bit stagnant, where things are getting a little bit blare. And that can happen, when you've been running a business for maybe 5 or 10 or more years, you rely on that business puts food on your table, but sometimes it doesn't excite you like it used to. And the difference in a small business to being in employment, you can't go to your boss and say, hey, could you give me something more exciting? Or could you send me over to the New York office every couple of years? If you're in your own business, you've got to do that yourself. You've got to keep yourself inspired. And that's very tricky. When I did my art gallery thing, I had no overheads, I had no commitments. I was a single man, I could do what I wanted. And the fact that I, lost quite a lot on that business only affected me. It didn't matter. And in fact, if I hadn't have lost that, I would never have had the courage to come to Australia. So it turned out to be a really good thing. But in business these days, I think when you're in a business, you've been running it for a while and it can start to get a bit tiring. You can disengage a bit from your own business. What do you do then? And that's what I'm really focusing my effort on now, is helping those people in that position. My gallery was showing young contemporary artists and furniture makers and musicians. So I had it all in the same space. So every show I had a soundtrack by a young musician, and every show had an artist and a sculptor or a furniture maker. So there was lots of interest, but not much of what I exhibited or that I was interested in was actually the kind of stuff that you want to bring home and hang on your walls. That's the truth of it. A lot of it was fairly sort of in your face, quite confronting work. In a lot of cases, confronting either because it was might be quite sad, or just, had imagery that was perhaps not something you want to be looking at whilst you're having a dinner. Or some of it was a little bit silly as well. I worked with some artists that were doing some unusual things, like sculpture and life-size sculptures out of hand-sewn leather and torsos and all sorts of odd things. So beautiful stuff for people to look at, not necessarily things for people to take home. So that, in essence, was really why my business didn't work. Now, it probably would have worked if I'd stuck with it. But at that stage in my working career, I hadn't learnt the importance of sticking with something, which is actually a really interesting learning that I got as a result of that business. Again, I see that's a lot in small businesses. A lot of small businesses start, they've got just enough money to get started. They haven't got enough money to, in many cases, enough reserve to go through the lean periods. And that's difficult, that's tricky, and that's often, catastrophic and terminal for a lot of small businesses. And that's what I did. I didn't have enough reserve. I think I would have succeeded in that business had I stuck with it. What was interesting is the very week I decided to close, a collector, an art collector, kind of sidled up to me, and he said how disappointed he was that I was closing. And this turned out to be I was totally oblivious to this, turned out to be a very serious UK contemporary art collector. But he hadn't bought anything from me, but he hadn't done, because he was just watching me. He was observing me, and he was drawing conclusions. Is this guy consistent? Is this guy reliable? Is this guy committed to this industry? He was watching me. And at exactly the point when he was about to come to me and say, hey, we can work together, I quit. I shut down. And that was really, really interesting for me. And it was a serious learning. And again, there's lots of parallels with small business, is you just never know who's watching your business. You never know who's circling you, but you've got to stick with it. So when I see people that run you, but you've got to stick with it. So when I see people that run blogs and they blog every day and then they get bored with that, and after 2 months they blog every month, and then you see a blog that hasn't been written on for 3 years or something. Same with podcasts. Lots of podcasts start up in a big splurge and then they gradually fizzle out. But it's sad and it's unfortunate because it takes time to build a sense of reliability and consistency in the eyes of customers or fans, observers even, So how would I sell art? If I were back doing that gallery again, I'd have made sure I had more money in the bank and I would stick with it. And I wouldn't do what I did, where I ended up dumbing things down. I ended up selling ceramics and postcards and smaller things in this kind of desperate bid to try and get some cash. It was bad form. So that's one option, is just to have the courage to stick with it and have the funds to stick with it. Or just sell cheesy, bright coloured things. Just sell pictures of roses and frangipanis and you'll do fine.
Okay.
Friends and family know nothing. Don't listen to them. They're not reliable. I mean, it's nice, but it's not true. Lifestyle business doesn't mean you lie in a hammock with your laptop. But a lifestyle business means you work where you want, when you want, with who you want, and you enjoy what you do. It allows you to be the person you want to be.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out this episode in a series where we interview business leaders, tech innovators, and startup founders about their business journey, insights, and reflections. If you find value in this, please leave us a comment below, and also like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.